Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Haribo, 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 Nitai go, Haribo, 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 Nitai go, Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur, Haribo, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Srila Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj. Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. So, today we are going to glorify Srila Gour Govinda Goswami Maharaj by telling stories about his life and pastimes. So you can all get an opportunity to understand the glories of this great Vaishnav saint who appeared in our midst in our lifetime. So, to open the program, I wanted to sing his favorite bhajan, which is Kripa Koro Vaishnav Thakur. This is written by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and it was Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's favorite bhajan. And so I'm going to sing it for you now. You please listen to it, and then I'll explain it in English. Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Sambandha Janiya Bhajite Bhajite Abhimana Haodura, Sambandha Janiya Bhajite Bhajite Abhimana Haodura, Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Amito Vaishnava Ebudi hoile amanina hoboami, Amito Vaishnava Ebudi hoile amaniha hoboami, Pratishtasa asi Hridaya dushibe, Pratishtasa asi Hridaya dushibe, Hoibo nirayagami, Hoibo nirayagami, Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Tomara Kinkara Apane Janibo Guru Abhimana Tyagi, Tomara Kinkara Apane Janibo Guru Abhimana Tyagi, Tomara uchista parajala renu, Tomara uchista parajala renu, Saranishka pati baji, Saranishka pati baji, Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Nije Shrestha Jani Uchishta Didane Hoibe Abhimanbara, Nije Shrestha Jani Uchishta Didane Hoibe Abhimanbara, Tai Shishya Taba Takiya Sarvada, Tai Shishya Taba Takiya Sarvada, Naloibo Puja Kara, Naloibo Puja Kara, Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakura, Amani Manada Hoile Kirtane Adhikara Dibe to me, Tomara Charane Nishkapate Ami, Tomara Charane Nishkapate Ami, Kandia lutibo bhumi, Kandia lutibo bhumi, Kripa koro Vaishnava Thakura, Kripa koro Vaishnava Thakura. O Vaishnav Thakur, please give me your mercy, knowledge of my relationship with Bhagavan, and the ability to do bhajan, sending my false ego far away. If I think I am a Vaishnava, then I will never become humble. My heart will become contaminated with hope of receiving honor from others, and I will surely go to hell. Give me the mercy that I can renounce the false conception of my being Guru and remain as your servant. Let me accept without duplicity your remnants and your foot bath water. By thinking that I am superior, a Guru, and giving my remnants to others, I will bring about my destruction. Let me always identify as your disciple and not accept any worship or praise from others. In this way, I can renounce the desire for honor for myself and can offer respect to others. Weeping sincerely at your lotus feet and rolling on the ground, I pray that you will give me the ability to chant the name Harinam purely. So this is the prayer that Srila Govinda Maharaj used to love to hear. He loved this bhajan. He was very fond of it, and he used to sing it, and he used to listen to it from others. Srila Govinda Maharaj was born in a great Vaishnava family. Both his mother and father were descended in lineages of great Vaishnavas. The mother came in a lineage from a temple that was established in the city of Jagannathpur. Jagannathpur was a city that was developed by a very wealthy Vaishya who came to that area in Orissa, made a lot of money in trading, and established his own town and called it Jagannathpur. That person was, I think, the great-great-great-great-grandfather of Srila Govinda's mother. His son that man's son became the treasurer at the Jagannath Puri temple. And every day he used to pray to Lord Jagannath that you please give me a chance to worship you in the form of Gopal. I would like a little Gopal deity that I could worship. And so Srila Govinda Maharaj ancestors used to pray like this. The son of this wealthy merchant who was the treasurer at the temple in Puri used to pray for Gopal to come into his life. And what happened was there was an elderly Baba in Vrindavan who had a Gopal deity. And he was worshiping that deity, but he was getting very old. And so one night Krishna came to him in a dream and he said that you please take me to Jagannath Puri and hand me over to the treasurer of the temple. He has been praying for me to come. You are becoming very elderly. You will expire soon, and someone has to continue worshiping me. I want that this devotee should worship me. So please take me to Jagannath Puri. So the elderly Baba woke up and he was thinking, what kind of dream is this that my Gopal wants to leave me? This must have been a mistake. It couldn't be real. So he didn't do anything to prepare to go to Jagannath Puri. So then, the next night, he had a dream again. And Krishna, the cowherd boy, came to him with his cowherd stick and he was shaking it. Hey, Baba, I told you, take me to Jagannath Puri. You're not doing what I asked you to do. Why are you still staying here in Vrindavan? You should arrange today to leave today and bring me to Jagannath Puri so that I can be with the treasurer of the temple. And then he took the stick and he beat him on the legs. And then what happened? The Baba woke up. And when he woke up, he looked at his legs and he had all these marks on his legs from the cowherd stick. So then he realized, Gopal wants me to take him to Puri. So then he got on his he got on his way. He got everything together. He organized leaving for Jagannath Puri. And when he arrived there on the way, he had another dream. Gopal told him in that dream, when you get there, you ask the treasurer, my devotee, to rub his hands on your legs, and all the marks that I left there with the stick will go away. So then he went to Puri and he met with the treasurer of the temple and he informed him of the orders of Gopal, and the treasurer was so happy. He loved the deity. He thought the deity was so beautiful, and he became so happy that Gopal has come into my life. And so he asked the Baba that you come with me to my village, Jagannathpur, and I will build a temple there for Gopal, and you'll be the first pujari. And so that arrangement was made. Meanwhile, the Baba asked him to rub his legs, and he did, and when he rubbed his legs, all of the marks went away. And so this personality, this treasurer who received the mercy of Krishna in the form of Gopal, who was Gour Govinda Maharaja's worshipable deity from his childhood, this was the beauty of, the power of the spiritual energy that was in this dynasty coming down from her great-great-great-great-grandfather. So she was in a very beautiful dynasty. She lived there in Jagannathpur, and she married a man whose family used to be involved in the Kirtan contest. They had Sankirtan contests, and what they did was they used to perform bhajans of Narottam Das Thakur, because his father and his father's brothers, his uncles, and his father's father, everybody, they were all initiated in the Sampradaya coming from Shamananda Goswami and Ranganath. So like this, Raghunandan Thakur. From Raghunandan Thakur, Shamananda Goswami's disciple was Raghunandan Thakur, and from these two, all these people in Orissa got initiated into Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So he and his brothers were all initiated in Gaudiya Vaishnavism in this lineage coming from Shamananda. So very, very great devotee. And he used to sing the songs of Narottam Das Thakur, and he used to read the Bhagavatam every morning. The Srimad Bhagavatam was translated from Sanskrit into Oriya by one of the Shiksha disciples of Mahaprabhu. His name was Jagannath Das. And he Jagannath Das used to perform puja to Lord Jagannath, to the Srimad Bhagavatam every day. And then he translated the Bhagavatam from Sanskrit into Oriya. And in every village in Orissa, there's a little temple called the Bhagavat Stali. And there's a copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And every day, people read out loud so many verses of the Bhagavatam, so that throughout the course of a year, the entire Bhagavatam is read out to the public in the village every year. And you'll see why this is significant later on when we talk about Srila Gour Govinda Maharaja's story. And getting back to that temple, which was set up, eventually, of course, Gour Govinda Maharaj, by the time he appeared in the family, there was a larger building. And also, before he left this world, he left money to build a huge building. There's a huge temple now for Gopal in Jagannathpur that was constructed by funds from Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's Pranami and ISKCON. And that is there today. You can go and see that temple. But when it was a smaller building in Jagannathpur, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, as a child, there's a story that his uncle told, that one day he saw the young Gour Govinda Maharaj, just maybe 3-4 years old. He was running around the temple building with a young boy. And they were going around in circles. They kept running around the temple and laughing and joking and poking each other. And so then the uncle came and he started to chastise them, and they both ran in the temple. And so when the uncle came in the temple, he said, "Where's that other boy?" And he said, "He's there." He said, "What do you mean he's there?" He said, "That boy was Gopal. He's there on the altar." So, famous story about Gour Govinda Maharaj from his youth. He was already engaged in his relationship with Gopal. Then, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj used to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from his father every day, and he used to hear the Kirtans of Narottam Das Thakur. So he grew up in a great Vaishnava family. Srila Prabhupada remarked once about how it was a special blessing that Srila Saraswati Thakur, his guru, was born in a great devotee family, and that he was also born to a great devotee in a great devotee family, and that his father was a pure devotee, and that his father used to pray. He used to invite sadhus to the house, and he used to ask the sadhus, "Please bless my son to become a servant of Srimati Radhika." So in this way, as Srila Prabhupada said one time, he said, and now I am actually engaged in the service to Srimati Radhika by those blessings. So this is a clear indication of Srila Prabhupada's mood. So we understand from Srila Prabhupada that it is a special mercy to take birth in such a family like this. And Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj had this mercy. He was born into such a family, a devotee family that always worshipped Krishna, that always thought of Krishna, that used to read Srimad Bhagavatam daily. And his mother used to tell us stories about how he would come and pull on his mother's dress, crying that he wanted her to read Bhagavatam. And at night he would weep and he wouldn't fall asleep until she gave him the Bhagavatam. And then he would wrap his arms around the Bhagavatam and then he'd fall asleep holding the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he was very attached to Srimad Bhagavatam and to Harikatha. He became very educated in the scriptures and used to give classes on Bhagavad Gita when he was only 16 years old. So he already was showing his transcendental potencies at a young age. And we see that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was a very great scholar. We'll find now what happened, that his father died when he was about 16 or 17 years of age. And he then went to college and he got an education in the college. He was an English major. He majored in the English language and he minored in Sanskrit. So he knew 5 languages, how to read and write and speak in 5 languages: English, Sanskrit, Bengali, Hindi, and Oriya. So he was a master linguist. And Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj used to do his service every day, even though he was going to school, etc. And then when he graduated college, his mother requested him that since your father has expired, that you should now get married and become the male head of the family, because that was the principle in Vedic culture. The eldest son should take responsibility when the father either retires to take sannyas or when he expires early. And so in the case of Gour Govinda Maharaj, his father died early, and so it was his responsibility. I asked him, I said, did you want to get married? He said, no, I had no desire to get married, but my mother asked me. And in the Vedic culture, when the mother requests the son to do something, you have to do it. You cannot refuse the son. We even see that in the story of Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, how his mother was dying and she sent a letter to Srila Saraswati Thakur to please send my son to see me. And Saraswati Thakur ordered him to go home and he wouldn't go. And then Saraswati Thakur called him and said, why aren't you going? He said, because if I go, my mother will order me to stay there and take care of the family properties. And I can't deny that order. And if I stay there, then I will not be able to stay here and serve your lotus feet. And I can't live without serving your lotus feet, because human life is so rare, and rarer still is to have the service of a great Bhagavat pure devotee like yourself. So upon saying that, Srila Saraswati Thakur blessed him and let him stay. So this is understood in Vedic culture. This is something that we Westerners do not understand or comprehend, because we don't have this kind of deep spiritual culture in our life. And so when Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's mother ordered him, you have to get married, he got married. So then I said, okay, you got married because your mother ordered you to get married. But you had 7 children. Why did you have 7 children? You weren't interested in getting married. So he said, it is also a Vedic injunction that when the wife asks you for a child, you have to give her a child. And so each time my wife asked me, I gave her a child. So then I stopped for a moment and I realized what he was saying. And I said, in other words, you're telling me that you only had relations with your wife to give her children and you never had relations with her otherwise. And he said, that's correct. I had 7 children in my life and I passed semen 7 times. So here we see the Grihastha Brahmachari, the control that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj had over his senses and his body and his mind, that he engaged only in procreation. He engaged in relationship with his wife only for the purpose of producing children and no other purpose. This is perfect Grihastha Brahmachari. Very rare, very hard to find such sense-controlled person. Then Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, when he was teaching, that was his job, to maintain his family. He used to teach. He used to take care of his family. He told me that when his children got sick, he would grind up some Ayurvedic herbs, and while he was grinding up the herbs, he was chanting. He said it wasn't so important, he said, that they were getting the herbs. What was important is that they heard the chanting and that they would chant when they took the herbs. He said the chanting was what cured them. See, he always believed in the power of the holy name more than anything else. So he was a testament to that dedication to the consciousness that the holy name solves all problems. And Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, his family told a story. I think it was his wife, his former wife, who told the story that there was a big hurricane that came one time, and everyone was very worried. So in the house, in the hut, they just had a mud hut. Everybody had mud huts. So in the hut, he took one of those big burlap rugs and he lifted it up with a stick, and he called his whole family to come in under the rug, and everybody was under that rug, and he held on to the stick and he chanted, and he just held on to the stick, and the whole family had everybody chanting all day, all night, until the hurricane stopped. And he said that when the hurricane stopped and they lifted the covering, his house was gone. All the houses in the village were gone. Everything was blown down, but they were protected. They didn't get hurt. Everyone was safe. This is the nature of this great family, that they were able to be protected 100% from the effects of the hurricane by the chanting of the holy name. And so this is the way he conducted his family life. He also later, he began teaching. The way he maintained his family was to teach English in the schools, but he used to talk about Srimad Bhagavatam on a regular basis. And at one point, he went away on a tour to the holy places. And when he went on the parikram to the holy places, he became totally absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And when he came back, he couldn't teach anymore. He was about 46 years old, 47 years old. He couldn't teach anymore. He was just telling stories about Srimad Bhagavatam the whole time that he was in the class. And so what happened was the people, the family became concerned, the people became concerned, the students, their parents, that he wasn't performing his duties well. And then one night, he just got up in the middle of the night and he left. And he went to leave his family so that he could take sannyas. He first went to a village some distance from there. Then all the family members came and argued with him about going back to his family. And he argued back and told them that he will not leave, go back to his family under any circumstance. And he left and he went to Hardwar Rishikesh in the Himalayas, because it's an old traditional philosophy in the Hindu religion that before you take sannyas, you visit Hardwar, Dwarka, Rameshwaram, and Puri. And then after you visited those 4 holy places, you take sannyas. So he took sannyas. He went there, and his name his family name was Brajabandhu Manik. Brajabandhu Manik. And he changed his name to Gour Gopal. And he said that the reason I changed my name to Gour Gopal was I was looking for a guru that would give me Gour, Lord Chaitanya, and Gopal. So these were the 2 things he was looking for, Gour and Gopal. So he went to Hardwar and Rishikesh, and he didn't find any guru that had this mood. Someone suggested that he should go to Vrindavan. So he went to Vrindavan, and he was looking for a guru in Vrindavan. And while he was there, he visited many ashrams. There's a system for Madhukari in the ashrams, in which the different ashrams serve prasadam to the sadhus on different days of the week. And so the sadhus will come and get a free meal there. Whoever's roaming the town or living in the town or visiting the town, the pilgrims, they can come to that ashram and get a free meal. It's usually a meal of khichdi, which is rice, dal, and vegetables mixed. So he was going to the different places, and he heard that the Bideshi, the foreign sadhus, the foreign sadhus had a place over in Ramanreti, and that they gave out prasadam on a daily basis. And so he went over there to get prasadam. And he sat and he had prasadam with everyone, and they gave him a Back to Godhead magazine. And he opened the magazine and he started reading the article that Srila Prabhupada wrote, which was talking about Lord Chaitanya and Gopal. And so from reading this article, he thought, this must be my guru. This must be the person who is my guru. So he requested the disciples that you please let me meet with Srila Prabhupada. But they wouldn't let him meet with Prabhupada because he had long matted locks and dirty clothes. He looked like one of the street sadhus or beggars. And so they didn't think that he was a fit candidate to come and meet with Srila Prabhupada. Of course, they were forgetting how dirty and disheveled they look when they were hippies and they first went to Prabhupada. So Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, being very intelligent, he waited. He waited and looked to see Srila Prabhupada's room. And he was looking at the room and he was looking in the window to see when nobody was in the room and the door was open. And when he saw that there was some opportunity to go in the room, he came around and walked in the room to see Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada asked him, oh, who are you? And he started telling, Prabhupada was a great gentleman. And he was able to see, he's Trikala Gana, he's the pure, perfectly pure devotee. He's able to look at a person's soul immediately and understand what kind of consciousness they had. And so when Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj came in the room, he could see that this was a very highly elevated personality. And so he asked him, so who are you? What is your name? Where do you come from? What is your education? What was your job? What are you doing? And Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was answering all his questions. When the servants heard Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj talking to Srila Prabhupada, they came in the room and they wanted to throw him out. So they asked Prabhupada, should we take him and throw him out? And Prabhupada said, no, you get out. You get out of the room. So like this, Prabhupada corrected them. And during the course of the conversation, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj said, Srila Prabhupada said to Gour Govinda Maharaj after some discussion, that I will give you sannyas and I will send you back to Orissa and you will make your own disciples. So in this way, right from the beginning, it was clear what Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's mission was, what his service was, what his position was. And Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj could understand that Srila Prabhupada was his real guru, because the real guru is the external manifestation of Supersoul, and he understands the heart of the disciple. And so he could understand that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj could understand that Srila Prabhupada was the genuine guru, the pure devotee, the real spiritual master, who was the external manifestation of Krishna, of Supersoul, because he understood his heart, what he wanted, to take sannyas and to preach the mission of Mahaprabhu. And so he surrendered completely to Prabhupada immediately. And Srila Prabhupada asked him if he could translate an article into Hindi, and he said he could. And so Srila Prabhupada called his servants in to bring a writing pad and a pencil and a BTG. And Prabhupada looked in the BTG and he gave him he said, read this. He said, can you translate this article into Hindi? Srila Govinda Maharaj said he could. And Srila Prabhupada told his servant, give him a private space to sit in quietly and translate the article. So Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj translated the article into Hindi and he brought it back to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada read it and he said, okay, very good. You can become a translator in my BBT, my Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And he told the servants to shave him up and clean him up and give him 2 sets of brahmachari clothing, and that he was now going to be engaged in the service of translating Prabhupada's books into the Hindi language and other languages. And so Srila Prabhupada was very happy with him, and Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was very happy to be engaged in Prabhupada's service. So they sent Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj to Bombay, because in Bombay, that's where the BBT had its headquarters at the time, in India, the Indian BBT. And so he was sent there to do his work, to translate the books into the Hindi language. And so he came to the Bombay temple, and that's where I first met him, in Bombay. And I noticed he was a very private person. He did his writing work, then he did his cleaning seva. He used to clean. He was very humble. He was 25 years older than most of us, 20 to 25 years older than most of us. So he was like our father. And yet, he very humbly took instruction to clean these. We used to cook these big pots we had, that we were cooking rice and dal and sabji to feed the poor people in the neighborhood. And so Prabhupada had that prasadam distribution going on. And of course, the pots had to be cleaned. And Gour Govinda Maharaj very humbly used to wash these big pots like a simple brahmachari. And when he wasn't cleaning and translating, he would sit quietly and chant. I saw him sit in the temple room all day, chanting japa whenever he had time, whenever he was free. He would have his beads and he would just chant. And I was thinking, this person is always chanting. He's always chanting Hare Krishna. So Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, one time I understood from Srila Prabhupada, somebody came in the room while I was there with Prabhupada and asked Srila Prabhupada, you know that boy in the BBT? Prabhupada said, boy? Which boy? He said, you know that boy, Gour Gopal. Prabhupada said, boy? He's not a boy. He's old enough to be your father. Boy. So like this, when I heard this, I could understand, we should give some respect to Gour Govinda Maharaj, that he's an older person and he should be respected, although he looked very young. So I was respectful to him when I would see him, but I didn't really develop a relationship with him right away. Later on, we went, Srila Prabhupada sent, first let me say that he got Harinam in Bombay after 2 months. And then after he got Harinam in Bombay, they transferred the translators of the BBT to Mayapur because it was a more peaceful atmosphere with more rooms available for them to sit quietly and do their translation work. So they transferred them to Mayapur, and he went to Mayapur. Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj went to Mayapur, and that's where he took Diksha mantras, his Gayatri mantras, after 2 more months. So after being in the mission for 4 months, he had Harinam and Diksha. Now, most of us had to wait 6 months to a year just to get Harinam, and then another 6 months or a year to get Diksha. But he got everything within 4 months because he was a very exalted devotee. So then Srila Prabhupada got some land, this land where the Bhubaneswar temple is located in Bhubaneswar. That land was donated. At the time, it was a jungle. It was just a vast jungle. There was these boars, these large wild pigs with tusks like this, running in the area. And there was long snakes, 10, 12 feet long snakes. I was standing on the veranda during the rainy season, and I was chanting japa, and this big black snake, about 10, 12 feet long, came out from underneath the hut that we were staying in. So I turned to Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj and I said, this big snake just came out from underneath the hut, Maharaj. Big snake. He was completely unfazed. He said, yes, he lives here also. So like this, you got this sense from him, like with Haridas Thakur, that he was undisturbed by anything. There was nothing that disturbed him, nothing that bothered him whatsoever. He was totally fixed in the service to Guru and Krishna, and he was undisturbed by any other external circumstances. And so, very advanced devotee, very, very high caliber personality. And then, when that land was donated, Srila Prabhupada asked me, I had a small party of devotees who were traveling and preaching, and we had a Sankirtan party. He asked me to go with Gour Govinda Maharaj to Orissa to try and help establish the center there. And so I went out to see the land. There was nothing there. And it was the town, the Orissan country, as you would call it, or the state of Orissa, was very poor. And at that time, practically no one spoke any English there or any Hindi. They all spoke Oriya. We had no books translated into Oriya. So we would go out and do Sankirtan, but there was no books to give out. There was no donations to collect. There was no way to make a transaction by which we could get a donation to help with our project. And so I had some money from the Sankirtan party, but the treasury was being depleted by living in we were living in not a Goshala, we were living in a Dharmshala. And we were living in this dharmshala, a very simple dharmshala. We were living there, and we were practicing, we were chanting every day. We would take prasadam, we would buy prasadam from the Ananta Vasudev temple, which is the Krishna temple there. In fact, Lord Shiva, the Shiva Linga temple, eats the remnants of Ananta Vasudev. And so we would eat the remnants of Ananta Vasudev. That was our meal every day, rice and dal and vegetables. And so Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, I finally went to him one day. I said, I have no more money. I can't maintain the brahmacharis here. And we're not making any money on Sankirtan. So we can't stay here any longer. We have to go. And the only chance for us to go is that I arranged one train, 2 cars on a train that went from Calcutta to Hyderabad for the festival, to take the devotees from the festival from Hyderabad to Calcutta. So I arranged 2 cars on the train with the railway manager in Calcutta, and I knew that train was coming to Bhubaneswar the next night. And so I said to him, we have no money for food, we have no money for the dharmshala, we have no money to maintain the devotees, so we're going to have to get on that train and go to Hyderabad. And he said, no, I'm not going. Prabhupada told me to come here, I'm staying here. So I said, well, you're a brahmachari, and brahmachari can't stay alone. You're going to have to come with us. So, I was acting like his older godbrother, not realizing that he was actually my older godbrother. And so Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj said, okay. He got on the train with us, and we went to Hyderabad. And then we went in to see Prabhupada the next morning. And Prabhupada asked why we left, and I explained why. And he was not very happy about it. He was expecting me to have more courage and more fortitude to try and make the project work against all odds, and I was not up to the task. Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was up to the task. He was ready to do that. And so he asked Srila Prabhupada if he could take sannyas so that he could stay there alone and preach. So Srila Prabhupada was very expert. What he did was he knew that all the big GBCs and sannyasis were in the room, and if he said yes, then they would fight with him. And if he said no, then Gour Govinda Maharaj would be discouraged. And so what he said was, do you know what it means to take sannyas? And so Gour Govinda Maharaj said, no, you please tell me, you're my Guru Dev, you explain to me. So Srila Prabhupada explained that to take sannyas, first of all, you have to have no more sex desire. Second of all, you have to be free of all fear of being alone. And third, you have to know that Krishna is always with you. So these are the 3 most important things. So he asked Gour Govinda Maharaj, do you understand? And Gour Govinda Maharaj said, yes. And just at that moment, Srila Prabhupada's breakfast was brought in the room, and they put the breakfast on his table to eat, and we all got up and left. And I went into the room with the servants and the sannyasis and the secretaries, and they were all saying, Prabhupada, he asked Prabhupada to take sannyas. Prabhupada didn't say yes, he didn't say no. And that was exactly what Prabhupada wanted, that they shouldn't know. They shouldn't understand what was going on. It was between the 2 of them. But later on, when we got on the next leg of the journey and we got to Vrindavan, at that time, Srila Prabhupada conducted a big initiation ceremony, and Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj took sannyas at that ceremony. And when Prabhupada gave him, Gour Govinda Maharaj told me that when Prabhupada gave me the danda, he said, you have understood. So it was between the 2 of them. It was between the 2 of them that he understood this instruction. So Then, after that, later on, I went with the library preaching party to Orissa and sold books to the schools in Orissa. And Srila Govinda Maharaj was developing the project in Orissa, the Bhubaneswar project. And so then I was given the opportunity to set up the program in Allahabad, which is now Prayag, by the grace of the present Chief Minister, Yogi Maharaj. He arranged to change the name from Allahabad back to Prayag. And so what happened there, I set up the festival site for the Kumbh Mela. Srila Prabhupada came there. Something interesting happened. Many interesting things happened. Prabhupada, Gour Govinda Maharaj came to visit, and he asked Prabhupada to please come to Bhubaneswar. And Prabhupada agreed that after Allahabad, after Prayag, he would go to Bhubaneswar. And they asked me to also, Gour Govinda Maharaj, they asked me to also go there. Srila Prabhupada wanted me to go there. So I got there about 2 days after Srila Prabhupada had arrived. And Srila Prabhupada was asking for me, that where is he? Why hasn't he come yet? So then I came. And then at that time, because I had been selling the books to all the big schools, universities and schools in Orissa, I had made connections with the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the state of Orissa, and also with the top industrialists there and some of the ministers in the state government. And I was able to develop some important relationships with big important people. And so what I did was I brought all those people to see Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj set up a big mud hut with 2 rooms. And one room was for Prabhupada and the other room was for him and the servants. And so, and Srila Prabhupada was so simple. There was no bathroom in the room. Prabhupada had to go out of the room, outside, and he had to walk about 30 feet or so to a toilet. We had put a toilet just in the yard. And we covered the toilet with bamboo fencing. And so that's where Prabhupada evacuated. And then there was a shower, which was covered by a bamboo fence, which Prabhupada went and showered in. And then Srila Prabhupada went back to his room. So the big important persons, when I brought them to see Prabhupada, they were saying, "What are you doing in this hut?" The Speaker of the House said, "I have access to all the biggest guest house in Bhubaneswar. I can put you in a palace." Prabhupada said, no. This is the room that Krishna has given me. This is the property that Krishna has given me. This is the place that has been provided to me by Krishna, and this is where I will live. And Prabhupada lived in such a simple manner like this. I brought this one industrialist. The man used to make these metal boxes, the metal trunks that they have in India. He had a big factory, thousands and thousands of metal trunks he was selling. And he met with Prabhupada, and he came out and he said to me, "I've seen in the BTG all the big palaces all over the world that he has in France and England and America. And he's sitting here in this mud hut. he invited Prabhupada to his house. He said, I have a big house. I have 20 rooms. You come live in my house with me. Prabhupada said, no. He said, this is what Krishna gave me. So he said to me, he could live in any palace of the world, but he's here living in this mud hut. This means he's a real sadhu. Real sadhu. I can understand that your guru is a real sadhu. He has total humility. And so like this, Prabhupada demonstrated this. And Gour Govinda Maharaj very humbly served him and followed him. And it was during this time that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj used to go into Srila Prabhupada's room alone. Prabhupada would send all the secretaries and everybody out of the room, and he would meet with Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj alone. And meeting with Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj alone, he would instruct him about his spiritual form and about Prabhupada's spiritual form and what their eternal relationship was in the spiritual world. And I remember him coming out of the room. I happened to go to the room the door of the room next to Prabhupada's room to talk with Satsvarupa Maharaj or somebody about some arrangements I was making for Srila Prabhupada to go to Puri. And when I got to the door, when I came out of the room, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj came out of the room with Prabhupada, and he was just effulgent. He was just shining. And at the time, I didn't understand what was going on, but later on, I realized that the transmission had been made by Srila Prabhupada from his heart to the heart of Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj of their eternal spiritual relationship and forms. And when that was completed, he became an effulgent personality in Bhav. And all the time that I lived with him after that, because Srila Prabhupada then, he ordered me. He ordered me. You stay here with Gour Govinda Maharaj. And I tried to argue that I didn't want to stay with Gour Govinda Maharaj. He said, no, you stay here with Gour Govinda Maharaj. I said, but I want to go to New York. No, you can't go to New York. But I could do something. No, you can't do anything else. I want you to stay here. I even said to him, I don't always chant all my rounds. He said, yes, but I see that you work very hard. So if you don't chant your rounds all the time, it's okay. Just keep working hard. Like this, he was very, very, very accommodating. So finally, I just said, Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado, Yasya Prasada Nagati Gatopi. I surrendered to Prabhupada and I accepted his order to stay with Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj. And that was the beginning of our relationship in a more intimate and spiritual way. And it was at that time that Srila Prabhupada also asked me if I wanted to take sannyas, which I refused. I was 26 years old. And I was not in control of my senses. And Srila Prabhupada asked me if I wanted to take sannyas. And I said, sure, I'd like to take sannyas, but I don't think I'd like to take sannyas right now. I'm only 26. I'm not very qualified, but maybe in the future I could take sannyas. Prabhupada said, yes. He said, you have understood how serious it is. So when you're ready, you can take sannyas. He said, you can take it later or you can take it after you're 50. After you've had a family, you can take it after you're 50. And that's what I ended up doing. I got married later on. I had a family. I was blessed with a very great devotee, Narasimha Sylvester, and a very wonderful daughter that I adopted, Sita Devi. And so in this way, I was given the opportunity to have a very nice devotional family. And then I left my family under the guidance of Srila Narayan Maharaj to take sannyas when I was in my 50s, as Srila Prabhupada had predicted. So after I started living with Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, I spent some time there, and I was working with Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, helping him to develop the project. I would go overseas. I would collect money. I traveled all over the state of Orissa to all these little villages. And I preached everywhere. and I distributed books. I used to help Srila Govinda Maharaj develop his books. When he was doing all this translation work of Srila Prabhupada's books, and at that time it was not offset printing. We didn't have offset printing. What we had is block printing, where they would put all the letters, single letters, in little blocks into a larger block to make a page. Then they'd seal it, and then they'd make an imprint, and then they would get. So Srila Govinda Maharaj was translating the book from English into Oriya on one of these little school composition books, like you get in school. And he would translate that, and I would bring this to the printer. This is what was brought to the printer. So the printer would look at this, and from this he would start developing the blocks. They had thousands of these, blocks full of letters, letter blocks. And he would then take the blocks and put them together, and he would develop the like 4 pages. That's how they would print it, 2 top, 2 bottom, and he would make the imprints, and then he would make a sample of the print, and he'd give it to me, and then I would bring it back to Gour Govinda Maharaj. This is called BC, before computers. So then I would bring this page to Gour Govinda Maharaj, and he would check all the work that they did, and he would edit and make it better. And then I would take this piece of paper back to the printer, and the printer would then make another copy, and then I'd bring that to Gour Govinda Maharaj, and then he'd sign off, okay, this one's all right. So they would gradually, you get the idea of how long the process was for getting one book to be printed. Besides that, it was the paper. You weren't allowed to buy paper. You had to get the paper given to you by the government. The government was the one that gave paper, and you only got paper for newspapers and religious books. And so I used to spend, hours filling out all a pile of papers, the administrative papers. I had to fill out all these forms. And then I go to the office, and there's 30 desks in the office. And so I give the pile of papers to the first guy at the first desk, and I said, so I'll come back tomorrow. I come back the next day. He said, no, I didn't look at it yet. Then I came back the next day. I didn't look at it yet. He said, I only look at the first page. He said, then this guy's going to look at the second page. And this guy's going to look at the third page. In other words, the whole 30 desks, there was 30 pages that I filled out, and each desk was for 1 page. This was the bureaucracy they had in India in the 70s. So I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get anything done here? And so I went to talk to some of the Indian people who worked in the offices and the government. Some of the Indians in the village, a few of them, 2 or 3 of them, had civil servant jobs. So they said to me, no. He said, you can't depend on these guys. He said, you got to go upstairs and speak to the big guy upstairs. He said, they all want money, but they know they can't ask you because you're a foreigner. Yes, that's correct, Rob Ewings. This was this bureaucracy was inherited from the British. And so then what happened was, at that time, we had Prabhupada's books with 4-color plates. Bhagavad Gita and Krishna book with 4-color plates. They had never seen anything like that. All the books that were in India at the time were just black and white on old, the paper that the government sent us was a little off white or a little off green or a little, it had green tint to it, beige tint to it, orange tint to it. It wasn't, pure white, sterling white. And I walk into the office of the chief guy who's in charge of the whole 30 tables. And I put the Krishna book and the Gita down. He's looking at this, beautiful matte white paper with 4-color printings on it. And he's like, "Oh, these are beautiful." And I said, "Can you help me get this paperwork passed?" So then he went downstairs and he said, "All right, you guys, get this done now." And so this is how we got it done, by Prabhupada's mercy. And so this was the service that I did for Srila Prabhupada and for Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, to translate the books into Oriya. And this is how we got the books translated and printed. And he was doing the translation work, and I had the responsibility to see that the books were printed in the Oriya language. And during the summer, I would go to the West with some devotees, and I would collect money. And I collected money to build another big hut in the back, so that new brahmacharis who came had a place to stay. And I also had to get cement for the foundation of the building. That building is sitting on the foundation. The cement from that foundation, I collected that all the way back in 1979. I collected that money. And again, it was the same thing. 30 pages of papers that I had to fill out and send the papers to the office. And so then after sending all the papers to the office, then I got the big guy upstairs to get it passed, and we got big truckload full of cement, and that was the cement that was used to build the... We had to build a go-down first, actually. Chaitanya Sima and his wife came, and their daughter, and we built a go-down. And they lived in that, one part of the go-down, and the other part of the go-down was where all the cement was. And he supervised that construction work. And so, like this, we had the cement, and that cement that I paid for with the donations that I collected in America is the cement that was used to build the foundation for the temple that's sitting there now. And so these were my services. The time that I spent with Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was so wonderful. Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj used to read to me from Radha Krishna Ganadesha Dipika and Gaura Ganadesha Dipika and so many books. And he used to tell me stories. I would read Jaiva Dharma in English, which came from the Madras Gaudiya Math. They had books published in English down there. And I would discuss the Jaiva Dharma with him. And he would read to me about the different inhabitants of Vrindavan from Radha Krishna Ganadesha Dipika and what their dress was and what their activities were. And like this, I had so much intimate association with him and received so much mercy from him, so much kindness from him. He was very, very kind to me. And there was, yes, that the temple, that the press was built later on by Tejas Prabhu. So like this, I had opportunity to associate with him in a very meaningful and sweet way. He was very merciful to me. He was very kind to me. I remember seeing, he was such a great example. From early in the morning, he would go to bed at like 8 o'clock at night. He'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd chant japa for 2 hours. And then after that, no, the press wasn't built in 79. Stop asking questions while I'm talking. So then after that, Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj You're making me lose my train of thought here. So, what happened was that I would watch him. I would see how he would perform his daily activities. He would get up early in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and he would chant japa for a couple of hours. Srila Govinda Maharaj would chant japa. Then after chanting japa, he would recite all these prayers for almost an hour. Then he would do translation work. Then he would do other mantras like this. He would spend 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours in the morning, whole long program that he had to do. And he had no time at all that he spent wasting any time. He wouldn't waste any time. He would always engage in Krishna's service all morning long. And he wouldn't eat. He would not eat unless and until he had the opportunity to finish all of the service that he had. He considered that this is my commitment to Prabhupada every morning. I have to do all this service first. And then after I accomplish this service, then I can take prasadam. This was the way he conducted his life. And he was a very powerful devotee because he was always so fixed. I came home from Bombay one time. He was lying on the floor sick. I said, Maharaj, what happened? Why are you sick? He said, the pujari went away and you weren't here, so I had to bathe the deity. And I left Gour in the cold air too long, and they got sick. And so they're punishing me, and I've gotten sick. So I said, well, I'll take you to the Ayurvedic doctor. I'll bring him here. No. He said, there's no medicine for this. Only Harinam and Gour mercy. And so he laid there on the floor for 3 days chanting while he had a fever and chills. 3 days. And then on the 4th day, he woke up and he said, okay, Gour have forgiven me now. So I can do, and then he took a bath, put on his clothes, and he went back to his service. This was the way he conducted his life, with absolute, unwavering faith in Krishna and Guru. He was dedicated to the service that he had for his Guru, and he was dedicated to his vision that the holy names were the only solution for any and all problems. He was a really exalted personality, very, very great personality. So I want to spend just a few minutes now, because I've been on now almost an hour and a half. I want to spend a few minutes talking about his pastime when he became overwhelmed. He was already in Bhav, and he became overwhelmed in ecstasy. And he started to achieve prema. And this was a special situation, special position for him. We were in Mayapur in 79 for the festival in March, and he was sitting in the room, and suddenly he started shouting very loudly, Vishnu chakra's coming, Vishnu's chakra's coming, it's burning, it's burning. Oh, Lord Nityananda, oh, Lord Chaitanya, they're coming, everybody's coming. Like this, he was, getting up and sitting down and getting up and sitting down and shouting and pointing to one direction and the other direction. He was seeing all these things, but we were not seeing them. Myself and Lagudi were in the room, and we couldn't see all this ecstasy. He was, and he was trembling and shaking and everything. And then finally he collapsed and he became catatonic and unresponsive. So there was this great tantric astrologer who, when he looked at Prabhupada's face, he said that Prabhupada had a face that he could build a house that the whole world could live in. So this was that famous quote. It came from this tantric astrologer in Mayapur. And so I thought, this man will know what's going on with Gour Govinda Maharaj. I got a van. We put a mattress in the van. We carried Gour Govinda Maharaj down and placed him on the mattress, and we drove him to see this astrologer. The astrologer came out of his house. He looked at Gour Govinda and he laughed. He said, he's in bhav. He's in ecstasy. Leave him alone. In a few days, he'll come out of it. And so I believed it, but I was concerned because no one else is going to believe this. I thought, none of the GBC or anybody's going to believe it. So I went to after taking Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj to see this astrologer, then I drove him to the temple of Srila Bhakti Daitya Madhav Maharaj, where there was this famous homeopathic doctor, and he was examining Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj. And while he was examining Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, he said he couldn't ascertain whether he was in bhav or not. So then after that, I brought him back to the Mayapur temple. We placed him in the room, and we brought the Ayurvedic doctor who had treated Prabhupada in Vrindavan to see him. So he felt his pulses and everything. I'm in the middle of giving a lecture, as you can understand.
Yes.
So I'm on Facebook. Go see the lecture. I'll talk to you.
We're opening it up.
Okay. So then what happened is the Ayurvedic doctor felt his pulses, and he said, he's has a nervous breakdown. His nervous system is collapsed. Now, this is the reason why he's saying all these things. So Sarva Bhavana, who was the childhood friend of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he started arguing with the Ayurvedic doctor, saying, how could you say this? He's a saint, he's a sadhu, he's in bhav, he's in ecstasy. The Ayurvedic doctor did not really agree with the assessment of Sarva Bhavana. And so what happened after that was that Sarva Bhavana finally said to him, look, isn't it possible that because of the ecstatic experience that he had, that his nervous system collapsed like this? So the Ayurvedic doctor thought about it for a moment. He said, yes, that's possible. So, yes, he could be in bhav. So then the Ayurvedic doctor started telling everybody that he was in bhav. And, of course, the response from the GBC was, oh, he's just doing this so that he can be guru, which is, of course, the kind of crooked thinking that they would have about themselves. They don't understand the straightforward and honest thinking of a pure devotee like Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, who has no pretense. So what happened was Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, started to come out of it gradually. Before that, to prove, I became concerned after the argument between Sarva Bhavana and the Ayurvedic doctor. And I wanted to somehow prove that Gour Govinda Maharaj was in bhav. And so I went out on the balcony and I was looking across at Srila Prabhupada's room in the Lotus building. Of course, Srila Prabhupada was no longer with us. This is 2 years after his departure. So I'm praying to Srila Prabhupada. I said, please send someone who can confirm that Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj is in bhav. Send me someone, a pure devotee, who can confirm this. And just as I was praying like this, Then I heard a big shouting at the gate of the Mayapur temple, and I looked over there and I saw this little figure jumping up and down, and everyone going, Jai, Jai, Jai. And I saw it was Krishnadas Babaji, who was a very exalted, pure devotee. So I went to see Krishnadas Babaji. And when I went there to see Krishnadas Babaji, I explained to him in my broken Hindi what was going on. And so he agreed to come up to the room to see Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj. So I brought him up in the room. On the way there, Bhakti Charu and Sarva Bhavana joined me, and we went up to the room to see Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Krishnadas Babaji started to examine him. He felt his pulses, he felt his forehead, he looked at his eyes, he looked at his tongue, he looked at his different parts of his body, and then he took a thread out from his uttariya and he straightened it out and he put it under Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj's nose to see how the breathing was. After that, he got up and he said, Bhava, 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 Bhava. So then Bhakti Charu questioned him, and he said in Hindi to Bhakti Charu that he's in bhav and his prema is ripening. So he was in an ecstatic bhav and his prema was developing. Gradually, over the next few days, he started to come out of it, and it was very interesting as he started to become conscious. He was unfamiliar. He had obviously gone to the spiritual world. And he was looking at his body and he started asking, what is this? He was touching his body like this. What is this? What is this? That's your body, Maharaj. It's your body. Why do I have this? He was looking at his hand. He said, well, what is this? This is your hand. Why do I have a hand? He had been completely absorbed in his spiritual service and spiritual activities in the spiritual world. And so when he re-entered into this three-dimensional material world, he was not feeling comfortable being covered by the material nature. And of course, the material nature then spiritualizes. Srila Prabhupada talks about this in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the pure devotee's subtle body dissolves. That's in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam. And then in the 4th canto, he says that the pure devotee lives directly within this material body, like a coconut lives within the husk. You could get an old coconut that's dried out and you can shake it. You can hear the coconut rolling around in there. And he said, although he's there in the body, he's completely detached from the body. He's not connected to the body. And Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj was not connected with his body. He was in a spiritual state and he was very exalted. He was very highly situated, and I eventually took him back to Orissa. He would never admit what his position was. I drove him back, and we had a vehicle, and I drove up there in the first place, and I was driving him back. And so I said to him, so what happened there, Maharaj? He said, oh, I was sick. I said, really? He said, yeah, I was very sick. I said, but that's not what everybody's saying. They're all saying that you're in bhav. No, I was not in bhav. No. So I said, but when you were there, Krishnadas Babaji came to see you. Krishnadas Babaji came? I said, yes. Krishnadas Babaji came to the room and he examined you and he said you were in bhav. No. He didn't, he was not going to express that he had this experience and that he was in bhav. He was not going to. He kept saying he was sick. And I knew he hated going to the doctor. I knew, even an Ayurvedic doctor, he didn't want to go to any doctor. He just chanted. So I said, well, if you're really sick, then I'm going to take you to my Ayurvedic doctor. Otherwise, you have to admit you were involved. So he looked at me and said, okay, I'll go to the doctor. He was so adamant that he wouldn't admit that he was involved. So I took him. This particular doctor was also a great psychic and visionary. He used to, after his meals every day, he would smoke hashish and then he would go into a trance and he would predict the future. He was a very powerful personality. And he examined Gour Govinda Maharaja's pulse. And then he told me, he said, yes, he was definitely involved, and it shattered his nervous system. He said, I'll make a formula to help strengthen his nerves again so that he could deal with the condition that he's in. And then he'll be fine. So I brought him back to the temple, and then he was taking the herbs, and he gradually recovered. Later on, he proved this principle that he wasn't attached to his body when he had the operation on his foot. And when he had this operation on his foot, they had to put him under anesthesia. So remember, I was telling you earlier that in all the villages in Orissa, everybody reads the Bhagavatam every morning, and they know the Jagannath Bhagavat in Orissa by heart because they hear it their whole life as children. So all the Orissan doctors who were in the hospital working on Gour Govinda Maharaja's foot doing the operation, he was under anesthesia, and the whole time he's reciting the 10th canto of Bhagavatam in Orissa. And they knew it because they had heard it before. They had understood what he was saying. He was reciting the 10th canto of Bhagavatam in Orissa while under anesthesia, which shows that he had no subtle body. His soul was separated from, it was in the body, but it was not attached to the physical body, so there was no control over his consciousness through the use of anesthesia. And so he was able to recite the whole 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam while the operation was being performed. So this is another example of his exalted, powerful position, that he was a transcendental personality, a pure devotee of the highest level. And so on this note of the glories of Srila Gour Govinda Maharaja's service to Srila Prabhupada, on this day, this is his appearance day. So we should all pray for the mercy of Srila Gour Govinda Maharaj, that we could get his kind of Guru Nishta, his determination to execute the order of his Gurudev and fulfill the orders of Srila Prabhupada. I want to thank you very much. Srila Gour Govinda Goswami Maharaja Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Srila Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Shalom. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Jai, wow. Very nice class.